Day 669, Wednesday, June 11th. Daniel 8. Daniel 8 1-27, NKJV. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking, that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and there, standing beside the river, was a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him, and there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground, and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this, and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, How long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, For 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Then it happened, when I Daniel had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning, that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, Understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, Look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation, for at the appointed time the end shall be. The ram which you saw, having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty, and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. And the vision of the evenings and mornings which was told is true. Therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterward I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. Daily Deep Dive, the UCG reading plan states, after writing in Aramaic since 2:4, Daniel now returns to writing in Hebrew, while he will write 2 more historical accounts in Aramaic, chapters 5 and 6. Those will be included in the early part of his book. Everything that follows 8:1 in arrangement order is in Hebrew, presumably because the intended audience was Jewish. It is now about 548 BC. 2 years have passed since Daniel's previous vision of the 4 beasts, see 7:1-8:1. While Daniel is in a deep sleep with his face to the ground, verse 18, he is transported in vision to the river Ulai, an artificial canal near the Elamite capital of Shushan or Susa, verse 2. This city, which was about 230 miles east of Babylon, would become one of the imperial capitals of the Medo-Persian Empire. Thus it was a fitting place to see the ram representing that empire. The ram's two horns represented the Median and Persian elements of the kingdom. Indeed, as with the symbol of the tilted bear in chapter 7, we see that one horn of the ram was higher than the other, in both cases representing the dominance of Persia over Media. C. 820. Ancient records declare that the king of Persia, when at the head of his army, bore in the place of a crown the head of a ram. The same figure is frequently found on Persian seals QTD. In Expositor's Bible Commentary, footnote on verse 3. The male goat coming from the west to cast down and trample the Persian ram, so swiftly that it is as if he flies above the ground, is the kingdom of Greece, its large horn being its first king, verse 21. That is, the first Greek king to succeed the Persian Empire after overcoming it. This could only refer to Alexander the Great of Macedonia, who carved out his vast Hellenistic empire in short order. Launching his attack against Persia in 334 BC, he had essentially subdued it by 332. According to the first-century Jewish historian Josephus, this prophecy in Daniel factored into Alexander's positive treatment of the Jews, along with other miraculous intervention. The account states that when Alexander laid siege to Tyre, he sent a letter to the Jewish high priest Jaddua, asking that he switch allegiance from the Persian emperor Darius to him, and provide him with military support. But the high priest answered the messengers, that he had given his oath to Darius not to bear arms against him, and he said that he would not transgress this while Darius was in the land of the living. Upon hearing this answer, Alexander was very angry, and though he determined not to leave Tyre, which was just ready to be taken, yet, as soon as he had taken it, he threatened that he would make an expedition against the Jewish high priest, and through him teach all men to whom they must keep their oaths. Antiquities of the Jews, Book 11, Chap 8, Sec 3. Alexander later moved down to take the city of Gaza. When the 7 months of the siege of Tyre were over, and the 2 months of the siege of Gaza, Alexander made haste to go up to Jerusalem. And Jaddua the high priest, when he heard that, was in an agony, and under terror, as not knowing how he should meet the Macedonians, since the king was displeased at his foregoing disobedience. He therefore ordained that the people should make supplications, and should join with him in offering sacrifices to God, whom he sought to protect that nation, and to deliver them from the perils that were coming upon them, whereupon God warned him in a dream that he should take courage, and adorn the city, and open the gates, that the rest should appear in white garments, but that he and the priests should meet the king in the garments proper to their order, without the dread of any ill consequences, which the providence of God would prevent. Upon which, when he rose from his sleep, he greatly rejoiced, and declared to all the warning he had received from God, according to which dream he acted entirely, and so waited for the coming of the king. Sec. 4. What is reported as happening upon Alexander's arrival is stunning. And when the Phoenicians and the Chaldeans that followed him thought they should have liberty to plunder the city, and torment the high priest to death, which the king's displeasure fairly promised them, the very reverse of it happened. For Alexander, when he saw the multitude at a distance, in white garments, while the priests stood clothed with fine linen, and the high priest in purple and scarlet clothing, with his mitre on his head, having the golden plate whereon the name of God was engraved, he approached by himself, and adored that name, and first saluted the high priest. Whereupon the kings of Syria and the rest were surprised at what Alexander had done, and supposed him disordered in his mind. However, his general Parmenio alone went up to him, and asked him how it came to pass that when all others adored him, he should adore the high priest of the Jews. To whom he replied, I did not adore him, but that God who hath honored him with his high priesthood. For I saw this very person in a dream, in this very garment, when I was at Dios in Macedonia, who, when I was considering with myself how I might obtain the dominion of Asia, exhorted me to make no delay, but boldly to pass over the sea thither, for that he would conduct my army, and would give me the dominion over the Persians. Whence it is, that having seen no other in that garment, and now seeing this person in it, and remembering that vision and the exhortation which I had in my dream, I believe that I bring this army under the divine conduct, and shall therewith conquer Darius, and destroy the power of the Persians, and that all things will succeed according to what is in my own mind. And when he had said this to Parmenio, and had given the high priest his right hand, the priests ran along by him, and he came into the city, and when he went up into the temple he offered sacrifice to God, according to the high priest's direction, and magnificently treated both the high priest and the priests. And when the book of Daniel was showed him, wherein Daniel declared that one of the Greeks should destroy the empire of the Persians, he supposed that himself was the person intended, and as he was then glad, he dismissed the multitude for the present, but the next day he called them to him, and bade them ask what favors they pleased of him. Whereupon the high priest desired that they might enjoy the laws of their forefathers, and might pay no tribute on the 7th year. He granted all they desired, and when they entreated him that he would permit the Jews in Babylon and Media to enjoy their own laws also, he willingly promised to do hereafter what they desired. Sec 5. These events transpired about 216 years after Daniel received his vision. 4 notable horns and another little horn continuing in Daniel 8. Alexander was prophesied to be broken when he became strong. Verse 8. And in fact the Hellenistic emperor died at the height of his career, before he was 33 years old. 4 notable horns would replace the broken great horn. This corresponds to the 4-winged, 4-headed leopard representing the Greek Empire in chapter 7. As was noted in the Beyond Today Bible commentary, Alexander's kingdom became divided among his generals into 4 parts, which then continued as distinct kingdoms. In its note on verse 9, the Nelson Study Bible states, "The little horn here is not the same as the little horn of chapter 7. The former horn comes out of the 4th beast, Rome, whereas this one comes out of Greece. The little horn here refers to Antiochus Epiphanes, the 8th king of the Syrian dynasty, descended from Alexander's general Seleucus, who reigned from 175 to 164 billion C. Thus, this prophecy skips from 301 BC, the time of the division of Alexander's empire, to 175 BC, when Antiochus became king. The identification with Antiochus Epiphanes, an evil ruler who persecuted the Jews and sought to corrupt them into idolatry, certainly makes sense. Indeed, a detailed prophecy of the succession of Greek-Syrian rulers, especially Antiochus Epiphanes, is given in Daniel 11. However, there is evidently much more to this prophecy. At least some measure of duality is intended, since Gabriel, an angel mentioned for this first time in this chapter, explains that the vision refers to the time of the end. Verse 17, see also verses 19, 23, 26. First of all, it should be recognized that since the Roman Empire took over from the Greek-Syrian kingdom, Rome and powers emerging from it could, in a sense, be said to derive from Alexander's empire, just as Greece and Persia emerged to some degree from Babylon. Indeed, the final resurrection of the Roman Empire in Revelation 17:18 is also clearly a resurrection of the Babylonian Empire. The beast of Revelation 13 is a conglomeration of the 4 beasts of Daniel's image, as the Roman Empire had swallowed up the earlier kingdoms. Therefore, the little horn of Daniel 7 and 8 could be synonymous on some level, or at least parallel. Although while the horn of Daniel 8 could signify Antiochus as well as the Roman civil or religious leader through the ages, and at the end time, the little horn of Daniel 7, springing from Rome, could not represent Antiochus, except as a precursor to the actual fulfillment. The Expositor's Bible Commentary offers the plausible explanation ... that the little horn arising from the 3rd kingdom serves as a prototype of the little horn of the 4th kingdom. The crisis destined to confront God's people in the time of the earlier little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, will bear a strong similarity to the crisis that will befall them in the eschatological or final phase of the 4th kingdom in the last days. In each case, a determined effort will be made by a ruthless dictator to suppress completely the biblical faith and the worship of the one true God. Note on verses 9 to 10. Continuing on with the predicted career of Antiochus, verse 10, we encounter the remarkable statement that he will grow up to the host of heaven, and will throw some of the starry host down to the earth, where he will trample on them. The host is a term most often used of the armies of angels in the service of God, especially in the frequent title, Yahweh of hosts, or else of the stars in heaven, cf. Jer 22. But it is also used of the people of God, who are to become as the stars in number, Gen 12, 3:15, 5, and in Exodus 12:41 are spoken of as the hosts of Yahweh, who went out of the land of Egypt. Now since the Greek tyrant can hardly affect either the angels of heaven or the literal stars in the sky, it is quite evident that the phrase, the host of the heavens, must refer to those Jewish believers that will join the Maccabees in defending their faith and liberty. It is then implied here that Antiochus will cut down and destroy many of the Jews during the time of tribulation he will bring on them, when he will have trampled on them. Same note. Of course, God's people at the end time, both physical and spiritual Israel, the church, is probably also intended, and there is likely an additional meaning. In verse 11, this little horn exalts itself as high as the prince of the host, the prince of princes, verse 25, God. Besides the megalomania of Antiochus, this verse also appears parallel to the prophecy of the man of sin, in 2 Thessalonians 2:3, the end-time religious leader, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And in all this, the exaltation as well as the assault on heaven's hosts, we are probably also seeing, in type, a description of the spiritual power behind these human figures, Satan the devil, who assaulted heaven in an attempt to replace the Almighty, and even corrupted, and brought to ruin others of God's angels. See Revelation 12:4. Like Satan, the little horn casts truth, God's word and law. John 17:17, Psalm 119:14-2, 160, to the ground. He causes the daily evening and morning sacrifices to cease, and brings about the transgression of desolation to God's sanctuary, verses 11-13. To what does this refer? On the spiritual level, Satan strives to end the prayers of God's people and bring them to ultimate ruin, and he succeeds in this with some. Yet, on the physical level, the transgression of desolation is obviously parallel with the abomination of desolation set up by Antiochus Epiphanes, as foretold in Daniel 11:31, an idolatrous desecration of the temple in conjunction with the ending of the literal sacrifices. We will see more about this in our reading of Daniel 11. Despite the past fulfillment of this prophecy, Jesus Christ made it clear that Daniel's prophecy of the abomination of desolation was also to be fulfilled in an end-time context as the signal event preceding the Great Tribulation. See Matthew 24:15 ff. Verse 14 of Daniel 8 states that the sanctuary would be cleansed after 2300 evening mornings, as the word days is literally rendered NKJV margin, compare verse 26. Expositors notes, this apparently precise period of time has been understood by interpreters in two different ways, either as 2,324-hour days, understanding Arab Bokair evening morning as indicating an entire day from sunset to sunset, like the similar expression in Genesis 1, or else as 1,150 days composed of 1,150 evenings and 1,150 mornings, for a total of 2,300. In other words, the interval would either be 6 years and 111 days, or else half of that time, 3 years and 55 days. Both views have persuasive advocates, but the preponderance of evidence seems to favor the latter interpretation. The context speaks of the suspension of the Tamid sacrifice, a reference to the Olat Tamid, continual burnt offering that was offered regularly, each morning and evening, or, as the Hebrews would reckon it, each evening when the new day began, and each morning. Surely there could have been no other reason for the compound expression Arab Boker than the reference to the two sacrifices that marked each day in temple worship, noted on verses 13-14. There were 3 years from the temple desecration by Antiochus in 168 BC, until its cleansing and rededication by the Maccabees in 165, see 1 Maccabees 1:54, 1 Maccabees 4:52-53, an event now celebrated by the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Yet since the prophecy is primarily for the end time, it also seems that there must be a last days application, either of 1,150 days, or perhaps 2,300. Indeed, some have postulated a 2,300-year fulfillment, stretching from ancient times to the future, based on the prophetic day-for-a-year principle, although it is not clear how this could fit, and this appears unlikely with the particular expression evening morning, which if denoting a day would seem specific to a 24-hour day. In verse 25, Gabriel told Daniel that the little horn would be broken without human hand, see margin. According to the apocryphal book of 2 Maccabees, Antiochus died of painful diseases, and in the end time the beast and false prophet will be destroyed by the divine Jesus Christ. Daniel was utterly shocked by the vision, finding it far more traumatizing than his previous one, as he considered the terrible plight his people would experience in the future. Whereas Gabriel had awakened him from sleep to explain the vision's imagery, verse 18, the prophet now fainted and was sick for days, verse 27. He was able afterward to resume his state duties, but remained stunned for some time. End.